Welcome to Your Vote, Your TV's extensive coverage of the 2025 provincial election. I'm Mark Rockburn. In the next half hour, we'll introduce you to the candidate that's running for the NDP in the riding of Northumberland-Peterborough South, Bruce LePage. Bruce, welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me today. So, first, let's start right out the top. It's your half hour to introduce yourself to the riding of Northumberland-Peterborough South and the voters. So, right off the bat, who is Bruce? And give us a bio and go as long or short as you want.
Sure, absolutely. I grew up in Nova Scotia, um, and after completing my undergraduate degree at St. Mary's University, I came to Toronto, and I entered a graduate program in environmental studies. And I immediately fell in love with the city of Toronto and the energy that was present all around me. It was just a great place to live, and this was in the 1988. So I was studying there, enjoying my studies, enjoying life in Ontario, and then I met my now wife, Sally, and I decided I was going to spend the rest of my life here in Ontario with her. So we spent about 9 years in Toronto. I ended up becoming a teacher, and I did that because I was looking at ways where I could help as many people as possible in my community. My background was physics and engineering, but that really wasn't cutting it for me, so I went into teaching. I taught about 9 years in Toronto. We started our family, and so we decided to move back here, where Sally grew up in Coburg, with our young son, Will. And so I taught here at Coburg East and then at CCI until my retirement in 2022. I taught physics, general science, and philosophy, and I was the IB coordinator from 2007 to 2022 upon my retirement. The last couple of years, I've been enjoying retirement. I volunteer with my dog Camus. We do St. John Ambulance therapy dog work in long-term care homes, and just getting caught up in things that I put aside because I was busy working. I don't coach anymore, but I still volunteer, and that's sort of who I am. And I'm a guy who loves being with his family and his friends. I'm very low key. I've had a passion for politics my entire life, but this is my first time entering the political ring.
That's usually the question that I follow up with the candidates that are new to running an election is, have you ever ran politically before, and do you have a political background to want to do this?
Sure. No, I haven't. Well, not really a political background. I've always been involved in helping and organizing people. I was the branch president for OSSTF at my high school for quite a few years. I've always volunteered in the community and at school. I've always coached. I've always had a real passion for helping people live a good life. Uh, Fighting for better healthcare and education. I've been on the streets for affordable housing, for workers' rights and human rights. And I've always put people first. It's always been my focus in my professional career. And I was asked a few years ago if I'd like to run, and I didn't have time in my life then. My son was still playing soccer. We're driving all over the place for that, and I was busy with my career. Um, but I got a call just after Mr. Ford called the election. It was actually the Friday. It must have been the 24th of January. I was actually just cooking an egg for my dog, and the phone rang, and I ignored it because I was cooking an egg. I had to focus on that, and the phone kept ringing and ringing, and finally Sally, my wife, said, "It's the NDP, and they keep calling." I said, "Oh, they probably just want a donation because they, have donated over the years." So I picked it up, and no, it was the central office asking if I would run, and they gave me all of 2 days to decide. So because it's a snap election, we didn't have a lot of time to ponder too much. So I hung up and thanked them. Listened to what they had to say. Talked to Sally and my son Will. Talked to my close friends who I trust. Whose counsel I trust. Talked to the local NDP organization here, and we decided we'd give it a shot. That'd be a good way for me to give a voice for some of the most vulnerable in our community who might otherwise be ignored. And uh, and I really believe in a lot of the things the NDP stands for, and I think those are things worth fighting for in this community.
It seems like it certainly is a whirlwind trip for sure. As you said, a very short election period. So why now? When that phone rang and you had the discussion with your wife and your son and close colleagues and such, why was it now? And what was your first thoughts when you thought it was the NDP party itself in Ontario reaching out to you to run?
Well, at first I was quite stunned because over the years I've been very very passionate about a lot of things. My wife has said to me more than once, "Why don't you run for politics?" And I said back, "Well, it's because I'm unelectable. I speak my mind and I don't take the easy way through things." And so after I thought about it, I said, okay, they're serious about this. They want me to run. I know the people involved here locally, and I trust them all. And I looked at what has been happening in Ontario for the past, 7 years, and even before that. And it's not the place I moved to back in 1988. When I first moved here, this was, known as the place of promise and opportunity, and people came from all over Canada and all over the world, and we started our lives here. And it was a great way to start one's life. But over the past few years, we're seeing poverty is getting worse. The gap between the rich and the poor is getting worse. Housing is becoming unaffordable. Rent is out of the reach of lots of people now. We can see that with, the growth of unhomed encampments around town. I know lots of young people starting their lives who can't leave their parents' homes because they can't afford an apartment. Uh, Healthcare is falling apart. We have way too much money going to the private sector in healthcare. There's hospitals aren't being filled. The hallways are being filled again. Uh, our nurses are being treated like garbage. We really need to take better care of these people. They work very hard. They do a wonderful job, and it's not a hobby for them. They need to make a living. They need to have safe work environments. Uh, and we just don't have enough doctors. I was actually just recently up at the ER for a chest infection, and the staff there were wonderful. The doctors and nurses treated me wonderfully. But the waiting room was full, and it took me about 5 or 6 hours to get an X-ray to make sure I didn't have pneumonia. But the people there were great. But we need more money in our hospitals. We need more money going to public hospitals, not private clinics, in private hospitals. We don't need to spend money on corporations that hire out nurses at twice the price that we can have them working in our hospitals. Uh, and our education system, like it's been quietly defunded over the past 7 years to the point now where Mr. Ford's government has reduced funding per student by about $1,500. So that adds up to a lot of money in a school and across the system. So we're seeing far fewer teachers in the system. We're seeing far fewer ECEs um, and EAs. We're seeing fewer secretaries, fewer custodians. Uh, and that affects the school in many ways. And we see, you know, classes are more crowded. It's harder to teach kids. It's harder to reach those kids who need that extra hand when you have 35 kids in a class instead of 25 kids in a class. Our most vulnerable students are not getting the support they need. We're losing a lot of those resources for that. And there's been a lot of concern in the news lately about school safety. And the best way to make a school safe is to have a lot of caring adults in the building. And we don't have that anymore. When I first started this job, 32 years ago, kids couldn't get away with much because there's always an adult within earshot. And now that's not the case. That's not the case at all. And on top of that, our school buildings are crumbling. They're way out of good repair. The climate is changing, so schools are too hot in June, July, and September. June and September, these kids are baking in the classrooms. And so a lot of money, again, we're putting our money in our wrong spots. And I think we need to really look at what we're doing in this province and who we're here to serve. And my opinion is the government is here to serve all Ontarians, not just the well-heeled and the well-connected. And so we're spending money to make sure Mr. Ford's friends get rich, the Vaughan developers of the world and the Mr. Westons of the world. But there's a lot of us here who need a lot more from our government, and it's time that we make a big change with new leadership and fresh ideas and try to stop this swing the wrong way.
All great valid points, but one question that I always ask all the candidates as well, and that's from Mr. Piccini right down to yourself, is why do you think we're having this election?
Huh, that's a great question. I think we're having this election because it's all about Mr. Ford. I think Mr. Ford, there was no need to call this election. He had a strong majority. He had a year and a half left. Uh, he should have been able to accomplish everything he says he wants to accomplish. Instead, he should have accomplished it already, really, quite frankly, in 7 years in power. But I think he saw that the writing was on the wall. The federal Liberals were changing leader, and that was the biggest thing that the federal Conservatives had going for them was the dislike of Mr. Trudeau. And we're now seeing in the polls, and he predicted it, that the Liberals are on a bit of an upswing, and he wanted to get ahead of that, perhaps. The other thing is maybe he just didn't want to be in power when the federal Conservatives took power, because we know they always turn off the taps to the provinces when they do that. And Mr. Ford likes using federal money for his own means. So really, this election isn't about protecting Ontario. It is not about given 4 years strong mandate. He has an incredibly strong mandate right now. This is about Mr. Ford protecting himself and securing his future for the next 4 years. It's not about securing our future.
So I take it you don't agree with the idea or the fact that when Mr. Ford said he had to call this election because of the tariffs that are possibly coming in from the President of the United States of America, and he didn't have a mandate to be able to fight those tariffs in the last election through being elected the last time.
No, I think that's a completely false narrative. For a couple of points. One thing, Mr. Ford has been on record more than once saying that Mr. Trump is his idol. He loves Mr. Trump. So to say that he needs to stand here and protect us from Mr. Trump is ridiculous. I can see him using Mr. Trump as a tool to further his privatization agenda in this province to make us more competitive, as they like to say. Uh, and quite frankly, Mr. Trump, you know, doesn't want to negotiate with our prime minister. He's not going to negotiate with a single premier. That's not his game plan. He thinks he's way above dealing with a premier of a small province in Ontario. And we're small potatoes to Mr. Trump. So it needs to be a Team Canada approach to deal with this. We need to have all the provinces aligned. We need to have the federal government aligned, and we need to have industry and labor aligned, working together on this project. Mr. Ford is not going to be Captain Canada on this. He doesn't have the skills and the tools to tackle this problem. He certainly had a mandate for anything he wanted to do. He had a large majority. Nobody could stop what he wanted to do for the next year and a half.
Very, very plain. Yeah, very, very plain and simple, as
Yeah.
you stated. A year and a half, he had a very strong mandate during the last election. So
Yes.
many people are saying that certainly isn't a reason. So what are you hearing at the door, Bruce? I know it's a short election period. You got to get
Sure.
out there. I know you were sick for a few days, unfortunately, as we were supposed to meet originally face to face, but always health first. But what are
Sure.
you hearing at the door currently?
Well, the things I'm hearing, first of all, a lot of people are not happy with the election being called, especially when they hear the price tag of $190 million approximately. I think that's money that they can see around the community where that money can be spent. When it comes to their concerns, the three big ones I hear, affordability is huge. People are worried about their daily and weekly budgets. They're worried about going to the grocery store. And, you and I are about the same age. You remember going in with $100 and that would last you a week, 2 weeks of groceries. Now it's a couple of days worth of groceries. Uh, so that's a big thing. And, people are worried, do I buy groceries for my kids? My rent's coming due, hydro's going up. How am I going to pay all these bills? Because my salary, my wages are not keeping up with that. And, the NDP does have a plan for that, and we can discuss that in a bit if you like. The other thing I hear, of course, is housing. You see, and a couple of different things. I was out in Brighton area last week, and a lot of concern there was about developers buying up farmland and building these big, monster subdivisions like we're seeing here in Coburg as well. And a lot of the local people in Brighton don't want that. They know we need housing, but we don't need these big homes that no one in their town can afford, and it's eating up valuable farmland. I spoke with a dairy farmer when I was down in Belleville, and he said his farm is being encroached on all sides by development to the point where he can't expand if he wanted to. This is a fifth generation farmer, and he cannot even do some upgrades to his farm because of setbacks set in place by the municipality because of these new subdivisions. So that's one aspect of housing is we're eating up our green space to build these big developer homes. The other aspect is we're not building the right type of homes. We need to have homes that people can afford not only to acquire but to keep and stay in. So we need more affordable housing being built. We need more affordable housing being acquired. We need a higher density closer to amenities. If you're paying half your income for rent, you also can't keep a car on the road, so you need to have public transit, or you need to be able to walk to your grocery store or your bank or whatever. You need to be able to afford your utilities when you're in there. So we need some higher density. We need affordable housing. Uh, we need co-op housing was doing a great thing back when we had that a long time ago. Like that's a great way to get into housing. We need the municipalities to be more involved with building housing and maintaining housing that's affordable for everyone. And mixed income housing is a great way to build community. It's the way communities used to be. We were in these enclaves of all the poor people here and all the rich people here and all the middle class driving their cars all the way over there to go to work, and we need to get back to things like that. So those are probably the two biggest things I hear. Healthcare is close on the tails of that. I touched on that a bit already. People in this area have trouble getting a family doctor. There's about 15,000 people in Northumberland who do not have a family doctor, over 2 million in the province, and that's expected to double in the next few years. Uh, and that's a few things. One of it is funding. There's not enough funding to hire more doctors, but also we don't have enough residency spots in the universities for doctors once they're trained. And I do know a young doctor, brilliant young man. He finished his medical degree, and he has not been able to secure a residency spot yet. And he's dying to become a family doctor here locally. But he's really working hard to try to find that residency spot. So we need to do that. We need to hire about 13,000, I don't know, 13,000 new doctors easily in this province. I know that's going to take some time, but between recruitment and opening training opportunities, we can get the healthcare back to where it is. We need to stop pouring money into private healthcare facilities. That money needs to go to public healthcare facilities where it's better spent. And the math is quite simple. If you have to have a profit motive, some of the money that could go to patient care is now going into a shareholder's pocket. And that's not necessary with our public wealth. That could be better used for us. As I said, we need to treat the nurses better as well. There's a nursing shortage, and nurses are leaving the profession in droves because of both physical and mental dangers of the job. And we need to make sure that they're safer. We need to have what they call nursing ratios. So nurses only have so many patients on a shift to work for, and they're not being overwhelmed with the number of patients. So I hear a lot of that going out there. And then I think when we start digging a bit deeper, people are concerned about the climate as well. And then, as well, they should be. As I said, back when I first came to Ontario, I was studying environmental studies. And I remember back in my undergraduate degree, first being exposed to the idea of climate change. And this was in the mid 80s with a professor I had. And so it's been around a long time. We know what's causing it. We know how to start to mitigate it. And we need a government who's going to take that seriously. We need to look at, cleaner energy. We can't, rip down wind farms. We can't tear out chargers for electric cars. We need to build cleaner energy. We need to start retrofitting homes. We got to build our homes better. We got to look at mitigating factors for floods. Flooding is going to be a huge problem especially in the cities and towns around Ontario in the next few years. And so we have a lot of infrastructure projects we need to work on too. So people are concerned about a lot of things. Some of them are very existential. How can I pay for my groceries this week? Some of them are more long term. Are my kids going to have a good environment to grow up in? It's going to be clean air and clean water. And some of it comes and goes. Like, people tend to forget about, oh, school seems to be doing okay. My son and daughter are having a good day. And then something happens and they look and say, yeah, there are 34 kids in that class. No wonder that happened. No wonder my kid is falling behind in reading. And people forget about healthcare until they get sick. They really do. So there's all these things that have been piling up and piling up, and they get to a point where it's what straw is going to break our camel's back. And I think we're at that point. And I think the threat of tariffs is definitely real, and we can tariff-proof our economy. We can make it safer for us to survive Mr. Trump and any future Mr. Trumps. But we have some really systemic problems in this province that have been longstanding from, certainly with Mr. Ford's days, but even going back into the earlier Liberal governments. The underfunding of schools and hospitals started there. The sell-off of public utilities started there. So both those parties have some blame. Mr. Trump or Mr. Ford, having been in power now for 7 years, certainly bears the brunt of that. He should have been able to fix all the things that he was so angry about when he first ran for premier. So I think, a lot of people are angry. I haven't really felt that before. Like I talk politics all the time with friends and colleagues and things. And this time people seem angry at the government. Like usually it's people divide on partisan lines and, oh, this is good and this is bad. But people are angry at what they see happening and how their lives are changing before their very eyes.
Quick first half of the show, Bruce. Great information that you're passing along to the voters for Northumberland-Peterborough South as to why they should vote for yourself. We're going to take a quick break. Still lots more here to talk about on Your Vote, Your TV's extensive coverage of the 2025 provincial election. Welcome back to Your Vote, your TV's extensive coverage of the 2025 provincial election. I'm Mark Rockburn, and joining me for the remaining half of the second half of the show is Northumberland-Peterborough South NDP candidate, Bruce LePage. So, Bruce, I want to touch on quickly on your background as a teacher, and
Yes.
obviously teacher for over 30 years, I do believe, 30-year career. So I want to ask you, what has changed during your time that you've seen that, because you stated a few times that why you're politically motivated as to what you've seen?
Mhm. Well, so much has changed. I mean, it is a totally different career than when I started. The obvious one is use of technology. And, I started, when I went to teachers college, they actually taught us how to use a Gestetner machine. It was that long ago. So, so there's been so much change in technology. A lot of it has been for the good. A lot of it has been for the bad. It's been well documented now how students struggle with attention span. I mean, that's always been a problem. Kids are kids. Uh, but having a phone there, the 24/7 fix of the social media is something that we struggle with in classrooms. Um, we see parents seem to be less able to instill in their students the importance of school. That's a big change I've seen. A lot of kids come to school with an attitude that school isn't important. And I remember my own days as a student and as a young teacher, that was a very small minority of students who came in and didn't realize it was worth it, right? And I don't know if that's because they see the struggles after they leave school, that they're not now guaranteed a good job, they're not guaranteed a great style of life. So why sit here and listen to this old man babble on about Newton's laws? Uh, so that's a big change, and I think there's been a change in the structure of schools. Administration is more concerned with the politics of a school than the day-to-day grinding out. It's a hard grind being in school for kids and for teachers. Very worthwhile. I wouldn't have stayed it in over 30 years if I didn't love the job. Uh, but things are different. Schools have a different feel now. They feel like people are just don't feel like they're as happy as they used to be in schools. The kids they're not getting the attention they need because the teachers don't have the time for it. There's been cutbacks on a lot of the fun stuff. It's if you want to be a school athlete, when I was a kid, being an athlete at school was a cheap way to play sports. But now kids are asked to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars to play on a sports team, and so that's excluding a whole large population of our students who would benefit from playing on a basketball team or a soccer team, let alone hockey or something like that. So I think the loss of funding uh, has been insidious, and you don't see it up front all the time. You wonder about, no, what are the textbooks like? Well, there's not as many textbooks. They have to last longer. When there's a change in curriculum, we don't often get the support we need to change that curriculum. There's two or three extra kids in every class. The hallway's a little bit dirtier because there's too fewer custodians in the school. There's some parts of this province where they can't get buses to run every day because of the funding for buses. So my biggest change is seeing, I think, a lack of general support for the schools through the government, and I think that trickles down into broader society when they see the constant attack on teachers and EAs, and so there becomes an attitude that teachers are lazy. That attitude goes into the kids. And nothing can be farther from truth. Want to meet a bunch of hardworking people, get together with a bunch of teachers and take a look in their eyes about mid-November and see how tired they are. But I think that's just that whole attack on trying to keep costs down, and I still think there's this move that this government in particular would love to privatize education. And so you create a crisis, as was famously said by one of a conservative minister years ago, and then you come up with a solution to the crisis you create. And I think they're trying to create that problem with their cutting and funding, and making schools just a little less happy place to be.
And so we got about two and a half minutes here, Bruce. So here's your pitch as to why the residents of Northumberland, Peterborough South should vote for you and not the other party, and the fact that, as always, it seems as the run is always the PCs versus the Liberals, but really the
Sure.
NDP is the opposition party currently in the legislature. So here's your pitch for 2 minutes as to why they should vote for you for a change in the riding of Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Okay, thank you. I think the big thing that we have to look at in this election is trust, and who do you trust to take care of Ontarians moving forward in the next 4 years? Mr. Ford has shown who he works for, and it certainly isn't you and me. Mr. Ford works for the rich and well-connected, and we need a leader who will not do that. Mayor Stiles is a great leader. I'm so impressed with her every time I meet her. She's proven herself to be a fighter for people. Our policies are great. We have a policy to help with the price of groceries with a monthly subsidy check. We have money laid aside to fix the schools. We have money to hire more doctors. We can do this. If we work together, we can make this better.
So, about a minute and
Oh,
15 here.
okay.
What? No, it's all good. All good. So what do you think is, when elected,
Yes.
number one priority for yourself for this riding right off the bat?
Number one priority for me, it will be the same as it's always been my whole life, is to talk to people, to learn from them and see what they need, and then to bring their concerns to Queen's Park. And hopefully I'm on the proper side of the aisle, not the other side. But to do what I can to make sure they get what they need, they can get their priorities taken care of and listened to. And I will always listen to the people of the community first. I'm not bringing my agenda, I'm bringing their agenda.
If people want more information, Bruce, on yourself or the NDP, where can they go to find that information?
There is a Facebook page for Bruce LePage NDP, and there also is an official site, which is brucelepage.ndp, OntarioNDP.ca.
I like to end the shows with all candidates with the same thing, Bruce, that the number one thing that you can do in the province of Ontario is get out and vote on February 27th. And we know there's a lot of voters out there, and we certainly have a lot of improvement on what we can do from the last election for the voter turnout. So Bruce LePage, the NDP candidate for the riding of Northumberland-Peterborough South. I'm Mark Rockburn. Thanks for watching Your Vote, your TV's extensive coverage of the 2025 provincial election.